What is up, everyone? Welcome into the Fight HQ podcast as we are here to get you ready for UFC 292 goes down there on Saturday inside the TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts. Of course, that is the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. I am Jason Floyd. Of course, if this is your first time checking us out here on Fight HQ, we appreciate you tuning in. Of course, be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you happen to be watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. Or if you're watching us over on the podcast channels, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. That really does help us a lot as well. Happy Thursday afternoon, Pete. How's it going, man?
What's going on, everybody? It's going well. Hope everybody's doing well. Exciting card this week, of course. Excellent pay-per-view. A little difficult from a DFS build standpoint, in my opinion. I don't know how I'm going to address it. Whereas I'm usually in love with a lot of underdogs. Not so much this week. I can make a case for a few of them, and obviously, you know, the main event, co-main event, you can make a case for anybody winning those fights. But it's from a viewer standpoint, I'm excited to watch it.
Of course, be sure to join our Discord channel. Totally free to join. Of course, the score questions do take priority. So if you want to jump in Discord, ask a question, or you can ask a question right here on YouTube. If you want to send a super chat, we appreciate that as well. Of course, as always, we appreciate everyone taking time out of your day to download, listen, whether you watch us live or after the show is over. Of course, we'll have our DraftKings contest. That'll be up here later on today, so you be sure you want to get into that. Just missed out last week, Pete. I missed out by like 5 points from cash, and I was like, I looked at that next day, I was like, damn, I had a decent lineup, just didn't have the right combination to take it down.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't even really remember how last week happened or what happened, but it was an okay result, and looking to make it a little bit better this week.
I mean, look, we sit here and we break down fights every week. I mean, if I would have sat here a week ago and said, hey, by the way, we're going to have 8 takedowns in the main event, you would have sat there and said, oh, clueless RDA.
Yeah, you would have thought, right? I mean, yeah, Luque looked like the true welterweight in there, and, RDA, it did look like a lightweight. I was pretty surprised at how built Vicente Luque looked in that fight. I did like Luque, so it worked out really well. I wish I would have got a little bit more aggressive with him because he ended up just going out there, putting up a pretty big score.
Yeah, you need him in your live last week if you're going to take down any contest. Of course, we had the third twister submission in UFC history. And, well, Damon Blackshear says, you know what? Let's do this thing again. Let's step back in there another 6 days, start up here, replacing Cody Garbrandt to take on Mario Bautista. I did see a note where Mario Bautista already said, like, hey, if he doesn't make weight, I don't care. We'll work out a deal, and we'll fight here on Saturday. Of course, we'll break this one down for you. Now, when we talk about game theory here, Pete, to me, game theory for this one is going to start with the main event and co-main event. And we're going to get into the actual fight aspect of it. But, like, I don't know if you have the same thought as me. I think the most likely scenario is neither one of these scheduled 5-round title fights actually makes it 5 rounds.
I'm with you. I do think that a finish comes inside the distance in both of them. I do think that you can make a case if it does go 25 minutes, it's pretty likely it's going to be Weili Zhang and an Aljamain Sterling victory, you would think. But I would agree with you. I think that, both fights are going to finish inside of 25 minutes. Hopefully it's not in the third round. And if it is in the third round, hopefully it's, with a ton of volume attached to it. So usually you can make the case for the fights being super competitive, and I think it could be competitive, but just based on some, technical deficiencies on both sides and kind of in all 4 fighters, if you want to really look at it, a finish is most likely in both of them.
Yeah, I mean, and when I look at the rest of this card, of course, also, Neil Magny stepped up here on basically 7 days notice, replacing Jeff Neal, taking on Ian Garry. And, Ian Garry's always been a guy that I've wanted to fade. I don't know if this is necessarily the option, but obviously a huge price tag that you got to pay for him. I mentioned about this on my podcast yesterday. I said, to me, the reason, the most interesting storyline on the prelims is obviously the return of Chris Weidman. I don't know what to expect out of Chris Weidman. I mean, typically when we see a fighter come back from that type of injury, they're just never the same. And Chris Weidman is 39 years old, but Brad Tavares on the other side, he's not a finisher. I mean, this is a guy that he's been in the UFC since 2010. He's never won a fight night bonus. Take that one.
Yes. That's pretty crazy. It is pretty crazy. I mean, matchups are everything and timing's everything in this game. And I think from a contrarian standpoint, getting aggressive over Tavares against the guy whose durability is in question, and when he does lose, he gets finished. It makes sense that perhaps the timing is now. I'll probably sprinkle it for a live bet, just from a prop betting standpoint, just because I do think that Weidman's probably far removed from his prime and also recovering from a massive, massive injury. So you would think the stars are aligning for a finish for Brad Tavares, but it could just not happen. And priced at 9,000, I was hoping he was going to be like 8,600, and then I was going to get like super aggressive. I'm like, yeah, I can see it happening because I do think that Tavares very hard to take down, and is going to be the better striker in this matchup against the guy who's lost a step coming off a long layoff with a major injury. I was going to get aggressive, but at 9,000, it's kind of like, I like other 9,000 options a lot more than him from a finishing standpoint.
One of the questions we got is about ranking the 9K options. I'm just going to tell you right now, Brad Tavares will be the last guy on my list at 9,000. I mean, and look, we'll get more into it, but to me, it's more about the history of Brad Tavares, and maybe just hoping Chris Weidman is going to go lace up them wrestling shoes, as you like to say there. Appreciate the super chat there from Liker, as always, man. I appreciate it, and we'll talk about what Damon Blackshear is doing here, and obviously that is going to be very interesting as he steps on the scale. One thing, by the way, me and Pete do want to know: do you like the show being on Thursday? You prefer the show being on Friday? Of course, we had to do a show last 2 weeks on Thursday because of my NFL preseason schedule. As I actually head up to New York tomorrow morning, but we do appreciate everyone tuning in. And also, one other thing I'll mention on game theory is I think there's two fights that I look at if we're talking about constructing GPP lineups that to me are very critical. One of them is going to be the third fight of the night, and that's Andrea Petroski taking on GM3. That to me, and based on your reaction, you must be feeling the same thing. That is a GPP fight this week.
Yeah, 100%. And I like both guys. Like I like the price tag associated with Petroski because of his massive takedown upside. He has submission skills as well. This is a guy in the Ultimate Fighter who looks really good, from a wrestling standpoint, and was somewhat of a gasser. It seems like he's kind of, rounded out that game, and, his he's a little bit more efficient with things. But I do see some openings for his opponent GM3, who is super inconsistent and constantly just, undervalued. Everybody thinks like you look at him like he wins fights he necessarily shouldn't. But the one damn thing that he's good at is wrapping up the neck. And if you're leaving that neck out there, as I do see on film, Andre Petroski does, I can see a GM3 guillotine all day long. And that's like, he's going to be my most aggressive underdog. But on the flip side, I think GM3's really lost a step too. I mean, he got absolutely schooled against Joe Pyfer, who's a very dangerous fighter on the feet, in addition to being a very talented grappler. Petroski has the tools to win this fight. It's just if he goes out there and is inefficient at any moment and has any lapse, you can see a GM3 round 2, round 3 submission happen all day long. So I'm going to be aggressive on both. And, I do think that this fight is pivotal for this slate.
The other GPP fight for me is I'm going to go to the fight that will be right before Tavares and Weidman, and that is Rodrigues and Denis. Just because of, look, I don't know how much you want to trust RoboCop in terms of if he doesn't lace up those grappling shoes and he decides to have a little bit of striking mastery, because I feel like if Denis is going to pull off the upset, it is him knocking out Rodrigues probably early in the fight. So that to me, those are the two fights in terms of a GPP lineup construction that are going to be priorities to me. But obviously you look at Rodrigues, he's at 9,500. There's other high-end 9,000 options I would prefer to get to over him.
I think it could be a very easy fight for, Gregory Rodrigues. Like, it's a very easy fight. He goes out there, he shoots a takedown, he takes the back, he chokes out Denis Tiuliulin. Easy. The issue is he's a grappler who's fallen in love with his hands. And for whatever reason, I don't know if he's just hunting bonuses, and that's why he's just constantly willing to engage in a striking matchup. But like he's not using his best skills out there. He's a fantastic striker, but his durability is in question. Sometimes he gets hit and he has an off switch. And if Denis Tiuliulin is going to do anything, he's going to throw bombs trying to knock you out because his grappling and it's mainly his jiu-jitsu. It's lacking. and it's lacking so much that Gregory Rodrigues can make this such an easy fight. But he tends to like make you sweat a little bit if you put money on him. So I was hoping he was going to be like 9,000 or 9,100, and then I can make the argument of getting to him over some other 9,000 options. But I think that he wins this fight 9 out of 10 times. It's just a matter of if he's stupid or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing in mixed martial arts, and that's why I think it's one of the most unpredictable DFS sports out there, just because of, as we always talk about, one punch, one takedown can really change everything. But let's get right into breaking down these fights. Of course, the main event, bantamweight title on the line. Aljamain Sterling looking to make his 4th successful title defense as he is challenged by Sean O'Malley. He is a minus 250 betting favorite. Sean O'Malley coming in at plus 205. Of course, as we do this show, the lines are not out on FanDuel. They do come out towards the end of the show. We'll give a quick breakdown of those FanDuel salaries. But over on DraftKings, Aljamain is 8,900 and Sugar is 7,300. And, and Pete, I've talked about this throughout, the past couple of years with Sean O'Malley. Is I think that Sean and the people around him have done an excellent job of giving him the right matchups. But now he's really in a situation where stylistically this is that bad matchup. But one of the things I did find interesting this week, listening to Ray Longo, of course, the head coach of Aljamain Sterling, he goes, look, we don't think that O'Malley is the hardest hitter we have ever faced. But what we do think is what could give us problems is the length and accuracy that O'Malley brings.
Yeah, it's the range, it's the timing. It's the speed of O'Malley that I think separates himself from the entire division, to be honest. His striking is just on a completely different level. It's his grappling defense that hasn't been tested against some of the best guys. Like if he had a matchup against Merab Dvalishvili, leading up to this fight, we would feel a lot more comfortable one way or another against Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling's a guy who spams punches and kicks wildly on the feet. Gets you to engage with them, and then shoots takedowns at a high volume. He's somewhat inefficient with his takedowns, but when he does get you down, he's very, very good at controlling you. He backpacks a lot of people. He can go out there and submit Corey Sandhagen very, very quickly in round 1. He could do the same thing here against Sean O'Malley. We've also seen him just be willing to control and just out-grapple and outmaneuver Henry Cejudo, Peter Yan. So I do think from a stylistic standpoint, if you put out everybody's skills, they would lean towards Aljamain Sterling in this matchup just because we have Sean O'Malley relatively untested in Aljamain Sterling's strengths. I do think that timing's everything. It's something I've been talking about for a long time. And I do think that the UFC would love nothing more than to see Sean O'Malley get the win. Of course. At the end of the day, these guys are going to fight. And it's going to, the big octagon, I think, will help Sean O'Malley here. If this was an Apex card or a smaller venue, I wouldn't like it. I think Sean O'Malley needs to be on his bicycle, moving around. He talked about it. Cannot let Sterling grab you. A lot easier said than done. I'm actually just, from a DFS construction standpoint, I'm always going to lean towards the grappler. So I'm probably going to be 60-40 leaning towards Aljamain Sterling from a DFS standpoint. But I will tell you that I am actually picking Sean O'Malley to upset and win the bantamweight title over Aljamain Sterling. So I know it's a hot take, and from a skill standpoint and a resume standpoint, it doesn't make sense. But I do think that Marlon Moraes showcased that on the feet. If this is on the feet, there are plenty of openings and plenty of mistakes that Aljamain Sterling makes. In the matchup against Petr Yan in their first encounter, Petr Yan was absolutely destroying Aljamain Sterling. And I do think that given the correct game plan and Sean O'Malley's preparation at one of the best gyms in the world, one of the most underrated gyms, the MMA Lab, and everybody associated with it, I think that he's going to be very, very prepared. So I'm actually picking Sean O'Malley to win the main event. I feel like you might be on the opposite end of that, but from a DFS construction standpoint, I'm basically targeting both sides because I feel like the fight will not go the distance. Somebody's finishing somebody in this matchup. Aljamain Sterling could go out there and submit him relatively quickly, but I do think that O'Malley finds that KO shot.
Yeah, I'm on the other side in this matchup here, Pete. And look, you bring up a lot of great points. And, I think one of the things when I think about the question marks heading into this fight, and more of the question marks I would say I have on the Aljo side of the equation. First up, it comes to what is this weight cut like? We have seen him struggle to get down to 135. He's talked about leading up to this fight that, 99.9% this will be his last fight at 135 pounds, and he plans to move up to 145 pounds. And I do believe that Aljo may be the most disrespected champion in UFC history. And I think a lot of that has to do with how he won the title. But the fact is, if he gets this to the ground and he gets on the back of Sean O'Malley, he may only need one takedown. And that, to me, like when I was watching the Countdown show, there was two takeaways I had. The first takeaway was there is literally zero mention of what Sean O'Malley is doing to get ready for the grappling aspect. And you being the fighter here, I think you know this very well, and the countless conversations I've had with fighters, is how much of this camp was about the potential adversity that Sean O'Malley is going to have to deal with. The other thing that stuck out to me was his head coach, Tim Welch, and he said, he goes, a big emphasis for them has been, this is a 25-minute fight. You cannot go out there and blow your energy in 10 minutes. You got to be ready for 25 minutes. That, to me, was a little bit of a thing. Look, if you're playing 20 lineups, 100 lineups, 150 lineups, you want to get to both sides of this equation. But as you always say, Pete, here on the show, your fear is the third-round finish, because a third-round finish is not ideal in these 5-round fights. Over on Prize Picks, I will tell you right now, I like the less than 65.5 significant strikes on Sean O'Malley. I like the under 16.5 fight time minutes on Sean O'Malley as well. Like, if you're going to attack this fight on Prize Picks, that's where I would go on Prize Picks. And like I say, on Prize Picks, I know everyone wants to chase those 5-player cards. Do 2 to 3. That is going to really allow you to make a profit over on Prize Picks.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I do think that if people don't know who Tim Welch is, he was a damn good fighter himself, and he's a very good grappler. So I will tell you, as a striker, every camp that Sean O'Malley's been preparing, he's always been preparing on get-ups and takedown defense and getting out of horrible positions. And now they really, really emphasize it for this camp and for the past 10 months or so leading up to Aljamain Sterling. Does that necessarily just completely eliminate the chances of getting taken down? No, but I do think that you can make your opponents pay. You can work back to your feet a little bit more, a little bit better. I would really love to see footage of Aljamain Sterling and Merab Dvalishvili grappling, because I think like that would be like some of the best, film to watch. And also I would love to see like Aljo deal with the adversity of somebody getting back to his feet, so often. Not saying that Sean O'Malley can do so, but it would just give me a little bit of insight where I could see, okay, well, in this situation, perhaps we have O'Malley, being able to capitalize. I don't think O'Malley's grappling is that bad. It's something that he's been working on forever, but I just think that Aljo is so strong in that skill set that it just doesn't matter. Like, he went out there and made quick work of Corey Sandhagen, who's now all of a sudden Corey Nurmagomedov against Rob Font. You know what I mean? So styles make fights. I don't like the idea of him, talking about moving up. I do think that cutting a lot of weight, can lead to a weaker chin, obviously. And somebody with the speed, the timing of Sean O'Malley can capitalize on something early. So I'm saying a first or second round KO for Sean O'Malley is my call. But the main reason why I'm getting behind O'Malley this week is I don't like a lot of underdogs. So like I'm really like convincing myself that this is possible and this is going to be it, because I look on the rest of the card. I'm like, what am I going to give it, favorites for every matchup? I don't see many underdogs coming through this week, and I've kind of had a gut feeling O'Malley does it. So I'm just going to ride with it.
Yeah, I'm with you on there. A couple of questions. I mean, look, everyone's asked about ownership. Look, I expect both these guys to be 1-2 in terms of highest owned on this card. But, more people are going to want to get to Aljamain Sterling because of the grappling upside that he has in this one. Anthony, I would not stack the main event. And the reason I would not stack the main event is I don't think this fight hits round 4. I don't know if this fight hits round 3. I think it's either Sean O'Malley catches Aljamain Sterling, like you said, within 10 minutes, or Aljo gets on the back. And look, if he gets on the back of Sean O'Malley, I think it's over.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know if he'll even want to submit him. He might want to pound him out, just have the hooks in and flatten him out and pound him out. So, Yeah, it's not a stacking week for me. It would have to be a 25-minute striking affair in which I would be heavily favoring Sean O'Malley.
Let's move over to the co-main event. Women's strawweight title on the line as Zhang Weili defends her title against Amanda Lemos. Amanda Lemos is a plus 250 betting underdog. The champion is minus 320. Weili, 9,200 on DK, 7,000 on for Lemos on DraftKings. You know, one of the things about Amanda Lemos, like I didn't realize this till the other day, she's 36 years old. I mean, this is, you know, when we talk about women's mixed martial arts, I mean, you know, yes, there's some outliers out there. You know, you think of someone like a Holly Holm, you know, someone like a Chris Cyborg, but generally speaking, we don't see it here. And, you know, I look at Amanda Lemos, and I think one of my concerns about her in this matchup, Pete, is there are times, especially early on in fights, kind of like Chito Vera, where she is a very slow starter with not a lot of volume.
Yeah, I mean, slow starters are tough, right? Like I'm always going to favor minute winners out there, guys that go out there, or women that go out there and you know, are you know, being a little bit more active, attempting more things, whether they're being efficient or not. And I just can't get behind Amanda Lemos here outside of just landing a shot and testing the durability of Weili Zhang. I see holes in her grappling. I see holes in her striking. And I think that a fighter in Weili Zhang over 25 minutes can, you know, really impose her will and end up being victorious here. So I like Weili Zhang here at 9,200 quite a bit.
Yeah, I like Weili as well, and I think it's, I mean, and you bring up great points. I mean, she might be able to catch Weili with a strike, but, you know, to me, and I was talking about this on my podcast earlier this week, and by the way, if you didn't check my podcast out, I appreciate you hit over the MMA Report podcast. I actually got some interesting text messages last night about some things I said on the podcast, but to me, it's when you look at Amanda Lemos and the resume, that to me is the thing that really sticks out to me is like, it's not a great strength of schedule when you talk about her victories inside the UFC. And I mean, yes, she could catch her, but for some reason, and I mentioned this prop bet, I'll pull up what the line was here. Weili wins via submission was the prop that stuck out to me. I want to say it was like, I want to say it was 2.5 to 1. Let me double check here. I want to make sure I give the,
I like that prop as well. That's kind of what I'm suspecting. And I think Weili Zhang's takedowns are going to be, you know, I think she's going to be successful. I think she's going to get the control, and then that's the best way to eliminate Amanda Lemos' power. Incorporate some ground and pound, and I do think she's going to hit her with a rear naked choke. So I like Weili Zhang to win via submission as well.
Yeah, just looking over at DraftKings Sportsbook, currently plus 400. When they open the lineup of Weili wins via submission, plus 700. So you can see people jumped on that when they saw that number, and that to me was there. I mean, but look, if you want to take a shot on Amanda Lemos, to me, you look at her. I mean, even Amanda Lemos wins by TKO KO plus 450. I mean, if you're going to lay some money on that fight, I would much rather just take Amanda Lemos wins via TKO KO than just taking her on the money line at plus 250. Next up, we got a welterweight matchup as we've got Ian Garry taking on Neil Magny. Of course, Neil Magny stepping up to replace Jeff Neal in this matchup. Send those healing vibes out to Jeff Neal. A lot of things going on with him. Ian Garry is approaching a 5 to 1 betting favorite. He's minus 490 as we do this show here. Neil Magny plus 370. And of course, over on DraftKings on the DFS side, Ian Garry 9,600. Neil Magny 6,600. And I feel like every time we talk about Ian Garry fight, I think we're both kind of on the same page of like, there's going to come a point where we want to fade this guy. And, you know, the one thing that I can't get out of my mind with Ian Garry is when Song Kanan dropped him. Now, he ended up, you know, finishing that fight in the third round. But it's one of these fights where, you know, look, Neil Magny's a gatekeeper. I think we both know that. But to me, if Neil Magny is going to win this fight, to me, it's about him making this an ugly fight where he puts Ian Garry's back up against the fence and potentially takes him down.
Yeah, I mean, Magny has to be successful with his takedowns to win this fight. I mean, he's been a volume striker, and then he started to lean on his wrestling, something that was a flaw in his game. And his length gives people problems. And then when he can mix in takedowns, he can win rounds. I just think it's going to be very difficult to do so against a very exciting prospect in Ian Garry. I was going to be picking Jeff Neal against Ian Garry. I will tell you, I think that there is a particular matchup for Ian Garry that's going to be very difficult. It's against a powerful striker who's willing to engage on the feet and somebody that we can get behind. And I think that, you know, Jeff Neal is the guy. I mean, look what he did to Vicente Luque. Look what he's done to multiple people within the division. I think that Ian Garry does make mistakes in his striking. I don't predict that Neil Magny is going to be the guy to figure him out. Appreciative that Magny's stepping in to fill in for Jeff Neal. But I do think that, the 9,000 price tag makes sense. 9,600 is a little aggressive. Magny's a tough guy to put away in a sense from a KO, TKO standpoint. But I do think that Ian Garry is going to find a finish one way or another over Neil Magny. Why pay 9,600 for Ian Garry if I really believe that Weili Zhang can do it when she's priced at 9,200? So I'll be mixing and matching, putting Ian Garry in there at 9,600. He's going to be my play for this fight. Neil Magny, outside of just an absolute punt play and who could possibly score enough in a loss, I just don't like his previous fight against Philip Rowe. I didn't think that they both looked good in the fight. He went 0 of 3 in a takedown department, scored only 65. And now you're going up against Ian Garry, who I think is much more well-rounded than Phil Rowe and much more dangerous. So the plays Ian Garry. I don't like Neil Magny in this matchup.
When you look at when Neil Magny has gone up against the elite of this division, he has not been able to get a victory. And to me, if Ian Garry wants to show that he is an elite member of this division, it's about going out there and finishing Neil Magny. Since you're looking at going back to 2017, RDA lost for Neil Magny. He was submitted in that one. Santiago Ponzinibbio in 2018, he was knocked out in that one. Michael Chiesa was a decision loss. Shavkat Rakhmonov, submission loss. Gilbert Burns, submission loss. I don't necessarily see a submission coming here for Ian Garry. If he does, then I think that would be very much a surprise. But to me, I think this is Ian Garry's fight to lose in this one. Of course, if you got any questions, be sure to hit those up, whether it's in Discord or right here on YouTube. Danny, I do see your questions. We'll talk about your question towards the end of the show. Let's move over to our next matchup. Of course, this was supposed to be Mario Bautista versus Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt had to pull out due to a injury, and now stepping in is Damon Blackshear, who, of course, we hit on last week, and getting that third twister submission in UFC history, returning now 7 days later. I want to see what he looks like on the scale, Pete, tomorrow. That's going to be the interesting thing, see what he looks like here. But when you look at the betting side of this, Mario Bautista minus 225, plus 185 for Damon Blackshear. Mario Bautista 9,100, Damon Blackshear 7,100. You mentioned about Sean O'Malley, which, of course, he does do some cross-training. And if anyone noticed, one of the things that Sean O'Malley said this week was he thinks Cody avoided this L because he thought Mario was going to take him out.
Yeah, I think he's right, though. I mean, the guys that are training with Sean O'Malley are absolutely skilled in all areas. The Mario Bautista, Marcus McGee last week looked amazing. So I think that Mario Bautista is, the favorite for a reason in this matchup against Damon Blackshear, who's looking to stay active. I get it. Damon looked really good in the matchup against who did he fight last week? It doesn't even show it on Fantasy Cruncher. I forget who he fought last week, but he hit
Jose Johnson.
Thank you. Jose Johnson on short notice with a twister. And it was relatively easy. I had 100% of Damon Blackshear, so that worked out really well. Having 100% of Marcus McGee didn't necessarily work out in my favor because there were other scores that weren't as pricey as Marcus McGee. So the idea worked, but all the 9,000 options crushed last week. So I think in this matchup, Damon Blackshear has been a guy who can get takedowns and is better on the feet than he used to be. I know he hasn't been finished, but I actually think that he might end up getting finished against Mario Bautista. I've seen just body language. I've seen him face adversity, and I actually like the skills that Mario Bautista has in all areas. I know that Bautista's been submitted against Corey Sandhagen in his debut and then lost via KO, TKO to Trevin Jones, which I find as a complete fluke. I think Mario Bautista gets this done. He's one of my favorite 9,000 options, despite Damon killing it for us last week. Maybe you want to ride the momentum of a guy who just went in there and made quick work last week, but I'm going to side with Mario Bautista here to get his hand raised, and I actually think that he does find the finish over a guy who hasn't been finished in the UFC against Damon Blackshear.
Just knowing how some of these situations do kind of happen is, it was likely a situation where the UFC went up to Blackshear and his management, his coaches, right after that fight and said, hey, You have any interest in stepping up here and fighting next week? So, but do want to see what it looks like on the scale. And, Pete, you can talk about this. You're always trying to peak for a certain day. I mean, what do you think the biggest challenge is of him fighting, 2 times within a 7-day period?
It's got to be the weight cut, right? Like, it's the weight cut for sure. Hopefully he's not. Is it at a catch weight or is it at 135?
I'm pretty sure it's at 135.
If it's at 135 again, I don't like the back-to-back weight cuts, which could result in being more fatigued than he's used to. Could result in him not being able to take shots. It also comes down to how much he's cutting. I mean, he could just be like 10 pounds away, and that's okay. It's still like a lot on your body, even though the fight was just so easy. It's just, it all comes down to how much of a cut does he have. I'm going to lean in the Mario Bautista's, direction just because of everything I just laid out. And I do not like the back-to-back cuts. Never mind all the skills and on the fight tape that I'm seeing openings for Mario Bautista. 9,100 I think is a good price.
Yeah, I mean, everything I'm seeing is at 135 pounds. Next up, let's go on to the opening fight of the pay-per-view. You got Marlon Chito Vera taking on Pedro Munhoz. Chito is a minus 200 betting favorite, plus 170 for Pedro Munhoz. Vera, 8,600 on DK. Munhoz, 7,600. And Chito Vera is probably the biggest Sean O'Malley fan coming up on Saturday night, even though he's coming off a loss against Corey Sandhagen. Corey Sandhagen may not like to hear us, but you're already hearing O'Malley saying he wants his first title defense to be against Chito Vera here. But, I feel like we could just go back to some old shows when we talk about Chito Vera, and we're going to talk about the same thing here, Pete. The guy's just a slow starter.
Yeah, he's a slow starter, and he's in a 15-minute fight now. It makes me want to pick Pedro Munhoz. I'm telling you right now, it makes Pedro Munhoz much more appealing than any normal situation. Pedro Munhoz throws good hand combinations, has great leg kicks, very good submission skills, tough to put away. Marlon Vera, very good striking, solid submission skills, slow starter. It's a guy that needs to get back to being aggressive in 15 minutes. And I don't necessarily love the fight from a DFS aspect. You have 8,600 for Marlon Vera going up against a very, very durable, Pedro Munhoz. 7,600 for Pedro Munhoz to go out there and possibly win a lower volume affair. I just don't see 100-point ceiling from either one of these guys. And you don't necessarily need 100 points if he's one of the very few underdogs to come through on the slate. I don't know, man. The 15 minutes is the only reason that I want to get behind Pedro Munhoz. But as far as skills and range and just kind of, momentum within their career, we did pick Pedro Munhoz. I picked Pedro Munhoz to beat Chris Gutierrez, and I looked smart in that situation. But styles make fights. I think it's going to be a close fight. I do still think Marlon Vera wins the bout, but as a considerable favorite, he should do a lot better, in this matchup than I think he's going to. I think he's going to play with his food a little bit, make things a little bit too competitive where it's 29-28 decision win for Marlon Vera. I'm just going to skip the fight from a DFS aspect. If I get to anything, it'll be much more of a Pedro Munhoz underdog decision win, but I'm just going to hope that my other underdogs come through. But yeah, it's still a Marlon Vera pick for me, despite the uncertainty in 15 minutes.
Like, to me, if I'm in the corner of Pedro Munhoz, and to me, the mindset this entire training camp has got to be, we got to go right when the referee says, let's get it on. I mean, just because Chito is notoriously a slow starter, so if you can bank that first round, now you only got to win round 2 or round 3, and we know Chito Vera is typically a very strong round 3 performer. Like in terms of a GPP play, it's not a fight I really love in terms of GPP, but like as I'm looking at current ownership projections and I'm looking for leverage spots, right now, Pedro Munhoz is one of 3 leverage spots I really see on this card. As we sit here on a Thursday, we'll see where those ownership projections go. By the way, I do want to mention on the Ian Garry fight time over on Prize Picks, I do like the more than 12.5 fight time minutes, just because I have a feeling that thing's going to hit late, maybe goes to decision just because of Neil Magny, but we'll see what happens there. Now let's move over to the prelims. We've got the return of Chris Weidman coming back 2 years after that brutal leg injury, now taking on Brad Tavares. Of course, both these guys, veterans of the sport here. Brad Tavares is a minus 270 betting favorite, plus 220 for Chris Weidman. Tavares is 9,000 on DK, 7,200 for Chris Weidman. And this is one of those ones of Brad Tavares is not a finisher. I think he has 2 finished wins inside the UFC. And I mentioned note, this is a guy that just doesn't finish fights. I mean, that to me is what's concerning. On the Chris Weidman side of the equation, Pete, is like, I don't know what to expect out of Chris Weidman. You look at when guys have come back from this type of injury, they're typically, it is the downside of their career. We do not see them come back from that. He's 39 years old. And I mean, look, this is a combat sports game, Pete. You know it. I know it. If I'm Brad Tavares, you know what I'm attacking right when the fight starts.
I mean, call it cheap, call it whatever. I'm doing the same damn thing. But, he'd have to switch stances and target the rear leg. But I do think that both fighters are intriguing from a contrarian standpoint. I think that you can get behind a Brad Tavares KO due to the durability questions surrounding Chris Weidman, in addition to the layoff and the injury. Weidman has lost via KO, TKO against Uriah Hall, Dominic Reyes, Jacare Souza, Gegard Mousasi, Yoel Romero, Luke Rockhold. Goodness gracious. He's been finished a lot. And if Brad Tavares is going to get a finish, you would like to think it is the timing. The stars are aligning here for him to do it against Chris Weidman. So I'm going to get Brad Tavares in a contrarian build just in case that he does find the chin or he does end up walking away with a knockout. But you do have Tavares coming off a KO, TKO loss himself to Bruno Silva, who's a very, very heavy hitter, relatively inconsistent, but Tavares in his losses, he's lost to Bruno Silva via KO, TKO, Edmund Shabazian, and then Robert Whittaker. Very talented fighters, dangerous strikers. Weidman at one point was knocking people out due to his just well-rounded skill set, making everybody worry about his wrestling, and then just damaging them with his hands. The issue is Brad Tavares' takedown defense is phenomenal, and he has excellent leg dexterity where he can defend single leg takedowns better than most people. Great instincts in the takedown defense department, finding underhooks, reversing cage position, getting back to the center of the octagon. I mean, it's a tough matchup for Weidman to return, to be honest. But I do think that anybody within rankings is going to be difficult for Weidman at this stage of the game. So I will be sprinkling KO, TKO props on both of them because they're both coming off of a ton of damage within their career, but more so for Weidman. But I do think that Brad Tavares is just going to be a little bit better than Weidman. I know Weidman's, training every day with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I like it, but I kind of don't like that style to complement his already okay striking, but phenomenal wrestling. I wish he would have gone with it's hard for me to hate on him working with Wonderboy Thompson, but I don't like him to go out there and try to become Wonderboy from a karate standpoint. I just think it's a little silly. I didn't like it for Chase Hooper. But yeah, it's a Brad Tavares decision win for me here at 9,000.
Can't wait to break down Chase Hooper versus Jordan Levin in a couple weeks with you. I can't wait.
Oh, God. I hate that fight so much. That's really a fight?
Yeah, it is literally a fight. It has been booked.
Oh, my gosh. I need to get, extra large coffees when I have to break down these shitty-ass fights. Some of these fights that I don't like either one of them. And then what's the matchmaker? What are they doing?
I feel like the matchmakers are trolling us. I really do. I really do.
I really do, man. I might have to add something to my coffee when I break that thing down.
This is my thing in terms of Chris Weidman. I want to see him lace up these wrestling shoes and take this one to the mat. And obviously you brought up a great point. Brad Tavares has shown great ability to stop the takedown. Now, there have been a couple of fights where he has been taken down multiple times, and it's just more of when I see a 9,000 price tag on Brad Tavares and just looking at his history, it's just very tough to get to that. I think this thing's going 15 minutes, by the way. That's why I like the more than 12 and a half fight time minutes on Brad Tavares over there on Prize Picks. I don't mind going more than 40 and a half significant strikes on Brad Tavares either. I don't feel good in saying this. My pick will be Chris Weidman. I don't feel good saying it. I don't feel good saying it. I don't feel good saying it, Pete. But
how's he going to do it? Decision?
Yeah, decision, and he laces up them wrestling shoes. He's got that United States Wrestling logo on his back. Hey, remember who you are, Chris. Remember who you are. Do not try to get into a kickboxing matchup with Brad Tavares. Take his ass to the ground.
Tavares is so good in the takedown defense department. That's why, like, I get it. It's just like I think that he's going to be struggling to find takedowns, and I don't think his grappling's what it used to be. I liked him when he was up in New York training with the Sarah Longo team a lot, complementing it by cross training with the Henzo Gracie guys. I like that. You're with
Well, he
Stephen
may
Wonderboy Thompson. You know
well
what
he
I mean?
moved for family decisions
I get it. I'm just
because you
saying
remember Wonderboy is his brother-in-law.
yeah, I know it's so crazy, but I don't know. I don't think he's going to be successful with the takedowns. I think it's going to be a tentative fight for both guys who are just coming off of KO TKO defeats, and I think it's going to be a Tavares decision win.
Look, in terms of like a GPP, if you go with the mindset of just fading this fight, I have no issue with that, just because of what that fantasy potential upside score could be. Let's move over. Next up, we got Gregory Rodrigues taking on Denis Tiuliulin. Tiuliulin is plus 275, minus 350 for RoboCop. Rodrigues 9,500 on DK. Denis is 6,700. I mentioned this earlier on the show, Pete. This is one of those fights that I do look at as a GPP fight. I mean, look, if you're Rodrigues, you're a grappler. Do not try to don't leave that chin up in the air, because if he does, even though, I mean, I'll take some stabs on Tiuliulin in this spot because of that knockout ability, but this should be Rodrigues' fight with the proper game plan.
Yeah, it's a 10% Tiuliulin play for me. Just in hopes that he finds the chin of Gregory Rodrigues, who was knocked out. But like I think that Gregory Rodrigues is going to have the much more well-rounded striking, has the wrestling upside, has the takedown city upside, and the submission finish upside. So like I really tell you, 9 times out of 10, Gregory Rodrigues wins this fight. It's a beautiful bounce back fight for him. And Tiuliulin just has horrible grappling instincts and horrible grappling deficiencies. So, the safe play is just play the under, but it's a Gregory Rodrigues play for me, a salary play for me. I like some other 9,000 options equally, and they come at a price discount. So 9,500, I really like him because I think it's safe, but I just don't like his fight IQ at times. That's the really only reason why I wouldn't lock him in, just given his fight IQ mistakes. But yeah, it's a Gregory Rodrigues play for me.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's about, like I said, it's about him utilizing that grappling. Over at Prize Picks, don't really love either one of the props that are out there on him, which is 28.5 significant strikes, and that fantasy score is 116.5. At that fantasy score, 116.5, you need a first-round stoppage, you need a takedown. I mean, you can get to that number, but it's still kind of an accurate number over there. Then our next two fights are going to be fights that are the finale of the Ultimate Fighter. Of course, this season, Team McGregor versus Team Chandler, where Team Chandler just whooped that ass all season long, if anyone watched it. And I will say this, like, if you did not watch the Ultimate Fighter, I get it, I understand it. But if you want to go back and watch any fight, go back and watch Kurt Holobaugh and Jason Knight. Those two boys put on a show. That is the one fight you're going to watch back. Anyone, go back and watch this fight. Of course, that was in the semifinals where Kurt won to advance on to take on Austin Hubbard here. Of course, both these guys getting back into the UFC, as Austin is a minus 165 betting favorite, plus 140 for Kurt. Hubbard 8,400 on DK. Kurt is 7,800. I had a chance to talk to Austin a couple of weeks ago, and it was when I did the interview, we couldn't, I didn't know who his opponent was going to be, and so I had to do the interview not trying to spill any beans, because I know what there is a major. I know back in the day, there was a fighter that I knew that was on it. And if you had any spoilers, if you revealed results, it was a $5 million penalty that if you were on the show. God. I'm sure it's probably more than that at this point. But, one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting, and Austin talked about, because Austin took a lot of criticism for his matchup against Roosevelt Robertson in the semifinals. And he's like, man, he goes, I was training with the guy every day. Like, he knew my tricks. I knew his tricks, and that's kind of why the fight led here. But, this is one of those matchups where, like, you mentioned about there's not a lot of underdogs that you look at this week, but Kurt is still one of those guys I do look at as an underdog, even though I do favor Austin in this matchup.
Yeah, I think you have to look at Kurt Holobaugh from a KO, TKO standpoint. He has excellent hands. His hands are really good. I mean, he digs to the body well. He throws volume combinations. He will stay in the pocket and trade. I think that his striking defense is lacking in a way, but he bites down on that mouthpiece and just throws more. So he'll throw more make you stop and shell up. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt too, but I do think that he can easily be controlled in this matchup. And the versatility of Austin Hubbard is what's making me pick Austin Hubbard. I like the power. I like the combinations that Holobaugh throws, but I think from a skill set standpoint, Hubbard just checks more boxes for me. And from a fight IQ standpoint, I think that Hubbard's going to go out there and put together a strong performance. I mean, he trains, at Team Elevation. He's 3-4 in the UFC. You have Holobaugh, who's winless in the UFC at 0-4. I think that Holobaugh, outside of a KO TKO, is just going to lose this fight. And he may have some more damaging combinations, but over 15 minutes, I expect Hubbard to put together a strong performance. And I like him here. I actually really like him here to find takedowns, to have a ton of control time, to work towards a KO or TKO or possibly a submission finish. So yeah, I like Austin Hubbard here. He's going to be a guy at mid-price that I'm going to get behind. I recognize what Holobaugh brings to the table. I mean, he's knocked out plenty of people that I know, and that power's always live to pull off an upset. But it's going to be an Austin Hubbard play for me here at 8,400.
Yeah, I don't mind what you're talking about there. I mean, if he goes takedown route, I mean, like when I'm looking at if you were going to go up there against someone like a Kurt Holobaugh, look, you don't want to get into a striking matchup. I mean, that is, and he will walk through punches as Andrew talked about it, and you saw that fight against Jason Knight. And I'll say this: I hope Jason Knight gets another opportunity in the UFC after going out there and doing what he did. I mean, I would imagine he's going to get another opportunity here. But the other one is the bantamweight finale, as you got Brad Katona taking on Cody Gibson. Cody Gibson, a plus 142 betting underdog, minus 170 for Katona. Katona, 8,500 on DK. And for Cody Gibson, 7,700 here. Cody is a guy that I remember talking to probably about, I don't know, I guess it was probably about a year ago. And this was a guy that was literally just like, he's like, I'm taking every opportunity I can get. And he goes, it doesn't matter where it is, I'm going to take the opportunity. And he made it very clear. His mindset was to get back to the UFC.
Yeah, I mean, good on him. I mean, he looked good in the Ultimate Fighter. Capitalizing on a mistake that happened of a slip. I do think that this is a very intriguing matchup, one where there is some bad blood, and you have clear grappling upside for Brad Katona, who likes to take people down and control them. I do think that despite the grappling pedigree of Cody Gibson, he's going to want to keep the fight on the feet and just throw more damaging combinations and make this, if this goes 15 minutes, be an argument of, damage versus control. So I'm going to say that Brad Katona is going to up the takedown potential in this matchup, look for control time, work towards a potential finish, just blend things a little bit better than Cody Gibson. But in both, just like the main event and co-main event, I don't mind getting to the underdogs in these Ultimate Fighter finales. I mean, they know each other pretty well. They know strengths, they know weaknesses. They are relatively comparable. So like you can say, and you can see like paths to victory for all these underdogs. I'm going to side with the favorite in Brad Katona. I think the mid price of Hubbard and Katona just kind of like is screaming to me here on a week where I'm not in love with a lot of underdogs. I'm still going to side with Katona's grappling upside to win a decision here.
Yeah, I mentioned to kind of maybe see if Prize Picks put a takedown prop on Brad Katona. That's going to be one that's going to really stick out to me if we get to Saturday, and there is one there. Next up, we got Andrea Petroski taking on GM3. Petroski is a minus 240 betting favorite, plus 200 for GM3, 8,800 for Petroski on DK, 7,400 for Meerschaert. And one of the things I think you got to talk about is Petroski knows Joe Pfeiffer. Those two guys are there in that Philly area, so obviously he's going to lay into it. But like you mentioned earlier on the show, Pete, like when you think about GM3, this is a guy that every time he's in an underdog position, it's someone we're looking at because we just know if somehow he can get his hands around his opponent's neck, he's got a chance to finish the fight.
Yeah, I would agree. And anytime you are willing to engage in grappling against GM3, he's like, please. He welcomes it. Just because he has such a diverse submission skill set. He can get out-muscled, and I think that he's going to get out-muscled early against Andrea Petroski, who has very explosive takedowns, explosive hand combinations. You have Gerald Meerschaert, more of the consistent fighter who will fight at a slower pace and will just always be there from the opening bell until the final bell sounds. And if you have cardio questions or you just get a little bit reckless, he will capitalize. And the one thing I was, I want to pick Andre Petroski at 8,800. I do. And I'm going to be like a 60-40 split just because of Petroski's tremendous takedown upside, who he can take down Gerald Meerschaert. He went 8 of 11 takedowns against Wellington Turman, who's a very dangerous Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner as well. Not nearly the finisher that DM3 is. But anytime somebody has 8 minutes of control time in 3 of their fights, I'm going to circle him. And I circled Andre Petroski because I do think that he can go out there and just blanket Meerschaert. The issue is on the Ultimate Fighter, he left his neck out there. And he's been doing tons of grappling competitions, submitting Eric Anders and, beating Phil Hawes and all these other, MMA fighters. So I think that his confidence is sky high. The momentum's clearly on Petroski's side, who's 4-0 in the UFC. You got GM3 looking career worst against Joe Pyfer, who's just very, very dominant. Went out there through ridiculously powerful combinations, shrugged off Meerschaert and finished him early in round 1. But just because Pyfer did it doesn't mean that Andre Petroski's going to go out there and do it. I do think that there is some insight, but you have to put some respect on the guillotines and just anything regarding that head and arm position that GM3 possesses. So the more I think about it and the more fight film I see, the more I see Petroski fighting guillotines against Wellington Turman, and then I see it also, in that Hu Yaozhong fight, and then on the Ultimate Fighter, makes me believe that Gerald Meerschaert finds the neck. Training at Killcliff FC, I think that he does find the neck. So at 7,400, he's going to be one of my few underdog plays. But, basically, I like both fighters for the DFS slate. I think it's going to be a massive score one way or another, but I will pick the upset that GM3 submits Andre Petroski.
Yeah, and when you talk about leverage plays this week, to me, you got to look at GM3 with what we're seeing of ownership projections right now. To me, he's one of 3 leverage plays. The other ones being Pedro Munhoz and Kurt Holobaugh will be the other leverage plays I'm currently looking at as we sit here on a Thursday afternoon. Now we got our first 2 fights tonight are both a pair of female matchups, as we've got Natalia Silva taking on Andrea Lee, minus 360 for Silva, Lee plus 280, 9,400 for Silva on DK, and Lee is 6,800. And I think I'm at this point with Andrea Lee, Pete, where I'm just fading her at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a gut check performance and a gut check fight for Natalia Silva, because I think Andrea Lee is going to bring it. She talked about it in some interviews where she's going to be so aggressive, and she kind of spams, striking on the feet. She throws tons of volume. She will go to the takedown well. She'll basically exhaust herself and do everything she can to win a fight. The issue is that she gets, lit up like a Christmas tree on the feet. She's ineffective with some of her striking, and volume does not take precedent over damage. And I think that Natalia Silva is clearly going to be the more efficient striker, going in there, landing the better shots, defending takedowns. She's going to have to defend a lot, similar to how she did against Jasmine Jasudavicius, where she defended 10. She defended 6. I'm sorry. And then 6 takedowns she defended against Teresa Bleda, who's pretty similar to Andrea Lee from a grappling standpoint. I actually can see Natalia Silva losing a round here, and this coming down to the 3rd round, and it'd be very competitive because Andrea Lee's fought very, very tough competition. But everything I'm seeing from Natalia Silva looks like a championship contender. I think that her strength of schedule, her last fight was her lowest opponent, Victoria Leonardo, and that's why she went out there and finished her in round 1. But Teresa Bleda, pretty solid. Jasmine Jasudavicius, pretty solid. You see what she did. Jasmine Jasudavicius did to what was her opponent? Not Macy Barber. I can't think of her name right now, but it was a very, very high profile win for Jasmine Jasudavicius. And I think that Natalia Silva is just checking more boxes for me at 9,400. I like her a lot. And I think that I'm going to just fade the price tag a little bit because I think it's going to go long, and I think it's going to be a decision win. So at 9,400, I'm okay with getting away from it a little bit.
And then the other female matchup, the opening fight of the fight card, you got Karine Silva taking on Marina Moroz. Moroz is plus 125, minus 150 for Silva. Silva, 8,300, and for Marina Moroz, she is 7,900, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, Marina Moroz is a fighter I want to get behind. because I think that she is an underdog from American Top Team who's going to be well schooled coming up in this matchup against Karine Silva. Karine Silva, a very, very, dangerous fighter for the division. I think that Karine might just be too strong now. And they did fight in the past, and Marina Moroz was able to submit her. But I think that, Karine Silva is going to be a little bit stronger than Marina Moroz in this matchup. She can get takedowns. They both can get takedowns. Karine Silva, more of a quick finisher, throws heavy shots on the feet. Her cardio is definitely a question mark here up against Marina Moroz, who is a very steady competitor and is not one to finish. So I think it's going to be a long fight that goes 15 minutes. And in 2023, I do think that the more powerful and more dangerous athlete is going to be Karine Silva, despite I hate picking against fighters that are a part of American Top Team, but I'm still going to be picking Karine Silva here at 8,300.
Yeah, I'll be picking Karine Silva as well. But, I mean, look, when it comes to female mixed martial arts, it's never a bad idea to take a sprinkle on one of these underdogs just because you know how it goes here. Let's get right into our straight-up fight picks. These are not DFS or betting related, just straight-up picks here. We've already talked about who our picks are in the main event, but we'll go here. Give me Aljo.
Yeah, I'm going Sean O'Malley.
Give me Weili.
Weili.
I would go Garry.
Garry.
Bautista. Cheeto. Underdog number 1, Chris Weidman.
Tavares.
Give me Gregory Rodrigues.
Give
me Hubbard.
Katona.
Petroski.
GM3.
And then I'm going to go both Silvas in the first 2 fights.
Yes, Silva's for me as well.
Let's get into some questions here. We'll first get over to Discord here. Value plays underneath 8K. I mean, look, to me, you look at both the underdogs in the main event just because of finishing upside. But when I look at other ones that I look from a GPP option, GM3 would be probably the top GPP option, but that's a boom bust play.
Yeah, 100%. So, GM3 is a boom bust play for me. If you look at boom bust, Sean O'Malley's a boom bust play. Yeah, outside of that, it's who within the under 8,000 range is like a finisher that you think can actually finish. I just don't see it besides O'Malley and Meerschaert. Maybe it's Amanda Lemos. I hate it though.
Yeah, like there was this question to Scored, and I'm going to kind of go deeper into Scored on this question, but to mention here, it said, if you're able to build one lineup this weekend, what would it be and why? Let me just say this. To me, if I'm just doing one lineup, and let's just say it's GPP, because if it's cash, then it's a different thought process. But for me, GPP, I'm looking at either Aljo or Weili. That's probably where I'm starting with one of those. And then I'm kind of working down. And then the problem becomes is, like we were just talking about, that underneath 8,000, I got to find some value somewhere. I mean,
I might be really light this week on DFS. I have to be honest. And you guys know me. I'm not. I play 150 lineups all the time. But when I can't make a case for a lot of underdogs, why the hell am I going to do it?
Samuel, appreciate your super chat there. Much appreciated. Best leverage spot. To me, there's 3 options. I look at Pedro Munhoz, Kurt Holobaugh, and GM3. That's just because of ownership. Right now, ownership is there's not a lot of leverage spots as we sit here on a Thursday afternoon.
No, there's really not. And it's got to be GM3. It's got to be Holobaugh from a complete contrarian leverage standpoint. Outside of that, we'll have to see what Blackshear's ownership is. Maybe he's the play, the guy who's just staying active, maybe, but I just don't see it from a skill set standpoint.
Takedown upside, I look at Aljamain Sterling, I look at Chris Weidman, Gregory Rodrigues, Brad Katona would be the top 4 for me. And probably if I was going to add a 5th, Austin Hubbard.
Yeah, okay, I like that whole list. Oh, and also we're probably missing Petroski, right? Like Petroski's got to be of the best fighters atop that list too. Yeah, just got to be careful.
Ranking the 9K options. So if I'm ranking these 9K options, so you got Ian Garry, Gregory Rodrigues, Natalia, Weili, Zhang, Mario Bautista, Brad Tavares. Brad Tavares would be at the bottom of the list for me. Okay. I would probably put number 1. I would probably go Gregory Rodrigues, saying that he laces up those grappling shoes. Number 2, give me Weili. 3, Bautista, 4 Garry, 5 Silva, 6 Tavares.
Yeah, I'm gonna go number 1, Rodrigues, number 2, Weili, and number 3, Bautista, 4, Garry, 5, Silva, and 6, Tavares. I have confidence in a lot of those. It's just from a score standpoint, and that's what I'm kind of ranking them based on.
Sub 7.5 plays. I think we've kind of noted the top 2 for me would be Sean O'Malley and Amanda Lemos just because of their finishing upside. Favorite core plays for me, I'm starting with Aljo. That to me. But if you want to go Gregory Rodrigues, don't mind that either.
Yeah, I mean, on a week where I hate a lot of underdogs, I think O'Malley's going to be my core play. And I know it's scary, and I could go 6 hours of having fantastic lineups just to lose it at the very final fight. But that's how I'm gonna build this week.
Favorite inside the distance fights. My top 2 will be Rodrigues, Tiuliulin, and Petroski, Meerschaert.
I love both of those. What a good call. I like that a lot. Is there somebody else? Not really. Like I can't wait to see what Sam's over under was if he put it in there. Because,
5.5.
I think it's right. I'm gonna say under.
That's a good number.
I'm seeing a lot of distance fights this week.
Yeah, I'd probably go less than that one too. I would definitely go less. Fair fighters you like with the best decision odds. I do like. I don't want to say Chris Weidman was like plus 500 to win via decision. That is one I would stick to. I would also look at Marlon Vera via decision as well. It's probably gonna come down if he wins round 2.
Weidman's number 1 fan right here, Jason Floyd. I mean, hey,
look, whoa! You've been sitting here for the last hour going, "Hey, there's not a lot of underdogs I like." I found an underdog that I'm like, I made a reason he can win this fight.
You're gonna get a
using your own words against you. Don't like it, huh?
No, I'm just saying, but like he loves Weidman. Watch Weidman go out there and then you're gonna clip it. What's gonna happen is Weidman's gonna go out there, say he wins. Jason's gonna clip it and put it all over social media. And
I would never do such a thing. No. But you would like me to clip you saying Sean O'Malley's gonna win, and if Sean O'Malley wins, then you would love to put that clip out there.
Yeah, but Sean O'Malley's not coming off of snapping his leg in half. Like, remember when like we had these girls that like broke their back and coming into the fight, and I was like, dude, I can't back a girl who just broke her back. Jason's, taking tibia, fibula, all that, and he don't matter. That doesn't mind. So he's gonna be back in Weidman, and I get it.
You just hating.
I guess
you over here hating. That's all it is. You over here hating.
Chris too. Yeah.
I will say this. I will say this. I think Chris is absolutely delusional thinking he has a chance to get back to the title. He is delusional when he's saying that. Like, that is where, God, there needs to be someone around him going, Chris, come on, man. You're 39 years old.
Yeah.
I mean.
That's your boy. Going to be fighting for a title 2024.
No damn way.
All right, hey, one for one. One for one.
Okay.
You like Weidman or Blackshear better?
I mean, I really like Mario, though.
I know. Isn't that close, though?
I think if it's a GPP contest, you go Blackshear. I think if it's cash, you go Weidman.
I think that's fair.
Just because I don't look at Weidman as a 100-point scorer. I think he's probably in that 70, 75. But if Blackshear can make this a grappling contest, I could see where he gets 90, 100 points. I really like Mario. I think Mario is one of the more underrated guys in the 135-pound division. I mean, it's unfortunate for him that he had a great opportunity against Cody Garbrandt, loses it, but that's what happens in the sport. I mean, that's exactly what happens. Anything you want to leave the listeners here before we get out of here, Pete?
No, I just want to say thanks, guys, for the support. Love it always. If you guys haven't already, can you please like the video, subscribe to the channel, help us get to 1,000 subscribers. Each and every one of you guys make this possible, and we really enjoy, going back and forth with the community in our Discord, which is free to join, and it's in our description below. Good luck this week. Hopefully you guys, hit some underdogs that you have a little bit more confidence on than I do. And I'm just going to really be the biggest GM3 and Sean O'Malley, fan there is, while Jason Floyd's going to have his Chris Weidman t-shirt on. So
look, I won't be able to watch these fights live, so I will not be in Discord. So if all of a sudden my phone gets blown up at about 9:30, I'm going to know one or two things either happened. So I won't be in Discord during the fights, but I will try to hop in there on Saturday morning, early Saturday afternoon. I'll throw in some Prize Picks plays. Had a really good week last week on Prize Picks. Not a lot is sticking out to me on Prize Picks, but obviously I want to see what the weigh-ins look like, maybe see some other things, and maybe some more things I want to jump on Prize Picks. But like Pete said, truly appreciate everyone taking time out of your day to support what me and Pete are doing here on Fight HQ, whether you're watching us on YouTube or you listen to us on the podcasting platforms. Of course, we'll be back here next week to get you ready for next week's UFC card. As always, we appreciate everyone tuning in for the Fight HQ podcast.